So we are excited. Our next session is Feeding the Future, Emerging Technologies in Agriculture. And Dr. Kevin Folta is going to be presenting for us today. He is a professor of Horticultural Sciences Department at the University of Florida. He's been recognized for his efforts in science communication with lectures and workshops that guide scientists and agricultural producers in changing public perception about food production. He's been recognized with the prestigious Cast Borlag Award in Agricultural Communications in 2016, the Ag Pro Person of the Year in 2017, the American Agri-Women Association Veritas Award winner in 2019, and received his PhD from the University of Illinois Chicago in 1998. So we're excited to hear what you've got to say. Kevin, take it away.
All right, very good. Yeah, one quick little regret is that I have to leave a touch early. I double booked because of the time thing, but I'm going to leave here a little late and I'm going to get there leave here a little early, get there a little late. So let me share this screen here. And certainly Modesta after me is wonderful, and you'll appreciate having more time with her. What I'm going to talk about, I was asked to talk about the future, and I think this is why it's so cool to be able to talk about this at this particular conference, because agriculture gets a bad rap. Too often it's looked at as this backwards a career where you're trapped in the past, the guy in overalls on the tractor, and we know that's not true. How do we make perception match the realities, and especially the realities that are coming? And I come at this from the standpoint of a researcher who works very intimately with the agricultural industries in the state of Florida. But my wife is also a small farmer. She farms fruits and vegetables, and we have a small operation at home, do eggs and things like that. So it's something I'm familiar with on many levels, and something I would like to see change from a perception side. And as educators, you're really in a unique position to be able to influence that change and inspire that change. And I think that's what's really exciting. And how do we make that inspiration happen? And the cool part about this is that agriculture has two components that matter to today's kids. And when I say kids, I'm talking about everyone from, probably third grade up through college. I really am impressed with my students. I'm at a huge university, and they're very different than they were a decade ago. And they are thinking big picture about the future that they will inherit, and resources, and how they can help others. And I just adore them so much. And I think that they're amenable to us stepping in a little harder to help shape their careers so that they can take advantage of what's coming and do so in a way consistent with their values. And I think technology is a big part of this. We all know it's easy to get kids excited about technology, and technology is a part of modern farming and will only be more. And I will show you today some examples of really cool technology that shatters the old model of perception of this is what a farmer looks like, this is what farms look like. And I think that really will help us break that mold. The other thing is making the world a better place. I think they really are there. And so when we talk to them about the future of farming and the technology that's involved and the reason why we're doing it, I think it does become extremely attractive. And that's the big trick. Don't talk about what, don't talk about how, talk about why. The reason we want to do this better is because our priorities have to change from where we were to where we're going. And I think making sure that farmers are always profitable, making sure that, right now we're facing tons of diseases. Like here in the state of Florida, we have unprecedented disease in citrus, which is extremely problematic. We need to think about the consumer. The consumer makes a lot of bad choices. And how do we have the industrialized world cut their healthcare costs by eating more fruits and vegetables and healthier food? That's something we can control to some degree. We can help those in the developing world. The fact that still 21,000 people die every day because of preventable illness, not just malnutrition, but a micronutrient deficiency, something as simple as zinc or iron or beta carotene, as was mentioned with the golden rice. This is the amount of stuff on that would fit on the head of a pin, would sustain you for a month, and yet they lack that, and there's still tremendous suffering because of lack of a tiny nutrient. We can fix that. And here in the industrialized world, at least in the States, overnutrition of the wrong kind of calories is a problem, and that's something we can fix too. And we have to do all this with environmental sustainability, because we only have one planet and limited resources, and things are getting better. The problem is we're out of land. We don't have a whole lot of arable space left. And if you live here in the state of Florida, where we get 7,000 new Northerners and Canadians moving to Florida every week, we are taking agricultural space and turning that into shopping malls and subdivisions. So where are we going to put the next generation of crops? And I think if we come at students with having them answer the question, what are the challenges? What are we up against in agriculture? And what are the problems we wish to solve? Then technology becomes an obvious extension of how we get to the future faster. And I think that's really cool. The kids know that we're dealing with differences in temperature, that Canadian farmers, enjoy 3 more growing weeks a year than they did 50 years ago. And new crops are grown in Canada that weren't previously there even 10, 20 years ago. It's changing the crops, but it's changing the pests and the pathogens. We know that this is a real problem that's going to require us to use fewer chemicals. Despite, what Megan was saying earlier about, chemistry being better, it is. But at the same time, it still costs money to apply, and it's a product that needs to be purchased. How can we come up with genetic solutions to disease and insects rather than chemistry ones? Labor. Farming requires labor. Technology can help us with that. And shortcomings in things like water. Water will be an extreme crisis everywhere in the world shortly. I mean, some places better than others, certainly. But water is another big issue that we'll need to deal with, both in its procurement through desalination and other ways to deliver it, as well as drought-tolerant crops. So we have all kinds of problems to solve, and technology to the rescue. The big one for me is this idea of arable land. And we can see in the green the tiny bit of our globe in which we can grow crops. As I mentioned earlier, it's not growing. It's actually shrinking greatly, both because of climate as well as from human population. So we need to do something to do this. And this is where technology comes in. We need to have sensitive intensification. How do we make more on that green space? And we're not making the green space bigger, it's shrinking. We need it to be more productive. So here's how we do it. We talk about this idea of feeding 10 billion people by 2050, and the fact that we're going to need more food produced between now and 2050 than was produced by all of agriculture up until now. That's a pretty big demand. But the way that we're going to get there is by a couple of ways, and these are all very important. Increasing access to education, empowerment of women, especially in the developing world, access to medical innovations. But some of the big ones will be food security and also security of water resources. And so today, what I'll talk about the rest of the time is food security and how technology will help us get there. So how do we get to increasing food security, both in the industrialized world as well as the developing world? Ensuring that we're making more with less in a sustainable way. We're going to need some new hardware. And some of this is already in place and is totally cool. And when we talk to kids about this stuff, they love it. New software. We'll talk about that. Breaking the rules, new crops and improved crops, and some things we never thought about before, and faster ways to make new crops in response to a threat. And this is where we need to be. And I think these areas are really exciting. It has to be rooted in sustainability. And sustainability is a combination of economic, environmental, and social sustainability. So we have to check all 3 of those boxes. Does it make money for farmers and producers and those in the agricultural chains? Is it something that's safe for the environment? And is it good for people? And if we can check all three of those boxes with all of our technological solutions, we got a winning formula, especially as far as today's students are concerned. Of course, there's opposition, and we know that. A lot of folks oppose any new technology. They always have and always will. And the book by Dr. Calestis Juma, Enemies of Innovation, is really worth a read, because people didn't like refrigerators or vaccines. Well, still don't like vaccines in some contexts, but they fought refrigerators and microwave ovens for a long time. And technology seems to always come out in the end. So it's important for us just to remember that while some oppose it, we have to talk about the beautiful things that science gives us and the outstanding opportunities we get to make a better life for people and a planet, and great stuff coming. So what's your role? And I think as educators, I think our biggest role is to be inspirational and talking about the why. Why? What are the problems to solve? And my dog's here. Come on, back off, Tough. When Zoom is fun. How do we inspire them? And I think it's about why. What are our values that we care about? What are the things we need to make the next year better than this year? And now that we've shaken the snow globe with COVID-19, thinking about how we want it to come out on the other side. And I think we can do that. Technology is where it's at. Here's the farmer in green overalls, which is the only thing in this picture which is antiquated and gross. We have a new kind of farming, which is bringing in everything from satellites to sensors. And this stuff is as much engineering and computers as it is food. This is where food production will start, and it's already taken hold in this area. You're seeing an exciting new time where these kinds of technologies will guide farmers' decisions. And this is the new hardware of farming. It's not just a big green or red tractor. It's the hardware that's around us. And technology will drive agriculture increasingly. Big data, big machines, lots of computing power will be at the cutting edge of agricultural production. Some of the things that are happening that are super cool. Drones and aircraft have become part of agriculture, whether they're guiding tractors, whether they're monitoring for pests and pathogens, or whether they're making other decisions about crop stress. You see drones, satellites, imaging, and analysis telling farmers where the water needs to be, where the plants may be stressed, where the plants are experiencing a pathogen attack. One model I saw recently has a rover on the ground that sniffs for the volatiles produced by a certain fungus. And when it detects them, brings in a drone with the pesticide to spray that location. That way you're not covering a field in a chemical, you're only applying it where it's needed. And that kind of precision agriculture is really hot. More new hardware. This is a variable. This is not a. This is a variable. Well, this is a new technology that sprays herbicides, and it does it like an inkjet printer. On the front of the tractor, you have a camera, and it looks for the weeds, and it identifies them by visual means. It identifies them through an algorithm that says this is a weed. Then it has, like an inkjet printer, a jet that runs over to that spot and sprays it with a specific herbicide for that weed. So different weeds use different herbicides more effectively. And this way you're not spraying a whole field, you're spraying that plant you want gone. This is new technology that's coming out in a joint collaboration between Bayer and John Deere. Fantastic. And it really is neat. You can drive across that field at 20 kilometers per hour and still be able to hit the weeds that fast. It's an awesome technology. There's also manual weeders that are coming, and this is all robots. Um, I had to give a keynote for a graduating class of biotechnology students at a high school. And I said, some people say children are the future, but I think it's robots. And didn't go over very well. But the idea is that robots will inherit a lot of the jobs that we used to put on people. And getting people out, if you go to California, you see migrant workers with short hose out in the field doing manual weeding for organic production. It's not, I don't feel that's ethical if you can have a robot do it. Robots work 24 hours a day. They don't get tired. They don't need breaks. They don't have to wash their hands. They will continue to work and take a job off of our plate as humans, which is a very important job for agriculture. The other new hardware in harvesting is going to be huge. On the left, a lettuce harvester. On the right, there's a tomato picker. This is all very real too, especially in small fruit commodities like strawberries and tomatoes. Blueberries are mechanically harvested because you can't afford to have a person picking fruit off of a plant, one after another, with tiny little fruits that are, a few dollars per uh, per half liter. I'm keeping my metric system going. Sensors in the field. There are sensors that speak back to uh, software that tell farmers what to do next. It helps fill in some of the gaps, and instead of irrigating an entire field that would be irrigate it where it's needed. Pesticides sprayed exactly where they're needed. A great example of this is something called I'll hear just more examples of sensors, which talk about nutrients that are present, so that farmers are applying nutrients only where they're needed and not where they're not, limiting the amount of runoff plus the expense of the chemicals that would have to be applied, and the labor and the fuel. So these are all checking those boxes of sustainability, less impact on the environment, better economics for the farmer. That's where the new technology will help bridge. And I think this is where we can get students super excited about what this technology can do. I haven't shown you one crop thing yet. I've always just showed you toys. And that's the point. This is cool new stuff. One really neat example is software that can do imaging and tell you where a field is dry or where plants are stressed. On the bottom here, that bottom panel shows from this morning in Florida, where we're in the middle of our strawberry season. Weather stations can predict when the outbreak of a fungal pathogen will occur. And when they make that prediction based on weather cues, they send a text message to the farmer: apply today and apply this and this. It's cut our fungicide application by 2/3 on a fungicide intensive crop. I mean, think about that for a minute. How cool is that? So the other thing that's going on is breaking the rules. If you run out of, I showed you those spaces of those slides of agricultural space and how we're losing agricultural land. Well, if you can't grow it from side to side, grow it up. And in the cities, this isn't a solution to all agriculture. You'll never do Canadian canola like this, but you can do basil, and you can do tomatoes, and you can do leafy greens, and you can do them all winter in Canada. And this is happening in no small way in Canada. Lots of investment from the government and lots of great companies up there really doing a great job. But each one of these shelves contains leafy greens, and you can do it near metropolitan areas. You can repurpose abandoned buildings. You can hire a local workforce. You can give customers stuff that didn't sit on a truck from California for a week. They get locally produced fresh produce that lasts longer and is less likely to be wasted. This is a win-win technology. And new innovations with respect to the way we grow vertically. This is stuff that of time with in my research program as well here at home. We have some of this. So really new innovations that are changing the way we think about specialty crops. The last bit of time today, I would just like to talk about crops. Those sludge pools grow a cool crop. Algae. And while we may not think of eating algae or duckweed or any of these pond scum type foods, they are prized in terms of potential animal feed. Most of the food we grow in the Midwest, in the States, is corn and soybeans. All this stuff goes one way or another into animal feed. Yet, could we feed animals with algae or insects to give them better nutrition from better, more diversified sources that are rapidly replaceable? And this is a major question going forward. How can this happen? The duckweed that's on the growing on the left there doubles every 24 hours. You can't do that with corn. And so these are great opportunities for us to be able to come up with new ideas for new types of farming to help us be more sustainable. The rest of the time, I'll talk a lot about genetic engineering, and this is a topic near and close to my heart. We now have beta carotene enriched soybean, cassava, bananas, and rice that can serve those that are vitamin deficient and help them retain their vision and improve life in the developing world. None of these have been deployed.
Oh, I've got mine
They
with
all
me.
exist, yet they haven't left the laboratory, mostly because of pushback.
Yeah.
So this is something that's happening, that's alive and well, and technology I hope will be released soon. But there's other micronutrients and vitamins that we've been managed to increase in crops. And we can keep going with this. Can we make crops that are better for people and as well as better for a planet? Improved tomatoes with lots of the healthy purple compounds. They also have a longer shelf life to limit food waste. But this is the kind of stuff that looks freakish, but it has all of these interesting healthy attributes. And I think future innovators, our students, get pretty jazzed about these technologies. Aflatoxin. Aflatoxin destroys tons of crops, especially in the developing world. And why we screen for it in the industrialized world, it leads to all kinds of disease in different areas of the developing world. New technologies can end aflatoxin, and these are now available in things like groundnut and corn and maize, which would be of great benefit both to animals and people alike, especially in the developing world. Uh, non-browning fruits and vegetables, like non-browning apples. This comes from up in BC, up by you guys. The Arctic apple, which when you cut it, doesn't turn brown, which means better quality fruits after you've cut them, which means more people are likely to eat them. Imagine when this technology gets put in the avocados and we can have guacamole that lasts more than a couple hours. I'm waiting for that one. Also, non-browning potatoes. If you have fruits and vegetables that just last longer. And the picture on the bottom right shows late blight, which is a disease of potatoes that has been beat with genetic engineering. So this genetically engineered potato not only doesn't turn brown, it also survives without fungicide. So there's two major steps forward in sustainability. Less inputs, fewer inputs, more marketable output. That's a real score. Other issues, removing allergens. Certainly every kid knows somebody who's allergic to peanuts or wheat, but those have been edited out of these crops with the new technology of gene editing. These crops no longer pose a threat to different kids or different people. And they haven't yet been released. They're still on their way, still being improved. But I would guess within the next 5 years, low gluten wheats and hypoallergenic peanuts will be a real thing. The BT brinjal, the eggplant in Bangladesh. This is a staple in Bangladesh, the eggplant. And they've engineered in a gene which stops the caterpillars from chewing on it. And it means these farmers that previously had to use lots of chemistries that we don't use here anymore, spraying them with a backpack sprayer with a cloth over their mouth to protect themselves. Their kids using antiquated means to spray crops. They don't have to do that anymore. Talk about a wonderful step forward for technology. I'm kind of coming up to I'm wrapping it up here, but the basic idea is that we can use new technologies like biotechnology, or they say GMO technology. I don't use that term. It is engineering. And engineering allows us to have better stress resistance in plants, resilience, higher yields, better nutrient density, and a really important one of flavor and aroma. Why is flavor and aroma important? Well, I think that people have this almost universal opinion that fruits and vegetables used to taste better than they do now. And I have a friend who has made bred his strawberries to have more vitamin C. And it took him 10 years to get a 20% gain, which is great. But I said, we're going to make them taste better. Instead of eating one, people will eat 10. So there's a 1,000-fold increase, a 10-fold increase in vitamin C. And then he walked out and went the other way. But you see the idea. If we make it taste better, it's more likely to be consumed, less likely to be wasted. We can make engineered animals that are great for animal health. We can stop bird flu, the spread of bird flu, which puts millions of chickens into landfills on some years, costing billions of dollars to the industry. The University of Guelph made the EnviroPig in 2001. It's a pig that has low phosphorus manure, which is a significant pollutant. We know that we can make salmon that grow to market size in half the time. All of this is done with genetic engineering. We know that there are problems throughout the world right now with African swine fever virus. And the countries up there in red and orange are the ones most affected. And it's a devastating disease to hog populations. There are genetically engineered hogs that don't get the disease, yet not yet deployed because of regulatory and most of all consumer attitude. Cows that are polled, they don't have horns. They don't grow horns like a Angus cattle would. I mean, they grow no horns. They're dairy cattle that don't grow horns, which makes them safer for being around other cattle and people. The bull over there on the left, he gives rise to 75% male offspring. So since males convert feed to body mass better in meat production and efficiency, that bull will give rise to more bulls than cows. And so this way we'll have a greater chance of being better at meat production than the females that he would potentially give rise to otherwise. A quick little genetic engineering trick. Again, none of these are likely to be deployed, but it shows students the range of things we can do. And this is just agriculture. and medicine. It's even better. It's amazing right now. So what can you do? The big thing is to inspire them with the idea that of why we need to take action. It's for our planet, it's for people, it's for animal welfare, it's for all of the above. How do we do more with less? And then the question becomes, how do we use technology, this really cool stuff we have, to do it? The bottom line is that a lot of our mistakes in agriculture didn't come from farmers and didn't come from the technologies. The mistakes came from our inability to communicate it in a way that mattered to the public. And whether it's the seed production companies, the industries around agriculture, whether it's us scientists, whatever, we kind of blew it. And that it was the lack of good communication that was the problem, not the technology. So going forward, how do we participate in that? And we need to shape food security. And one of the easy ways to do that is just by participating in the conversation. We have an opportunity to fix this, and that's all of us. And since we have influence with students, we can help deputize them to do it too. People love new technology except when they don't, right? So the idea is we need to inspire engagement, create content, write, produce YouTube videos, get the students doing this kind of stuff, share their creative energies to do the right thing to help people and the planet. That's how we beat this. The bad guys who don't like agriculture are masters of this. We're not so good. But there's a lot more of us than there are of them. So we just need to be active with our industries and with our farmers and with our educators to create good content that is inspirational, talking about why it's important to use technology in agriculture. And if you don't want to create content, share the content of people who do create it. You can have a huge role in sharing information with the people who trust you. And share the stuff I write, share the stuff Megan writes, share the stuff of other folks who are in this discussion and actively taking on disinformation. It's really important. One great example, I was in Australia last year and I took a picture of canola and I said, canola is one of the most beautiful crops. Nothing too inflammatory. Didn't say anyone was an idiot. Didn't say anything about any presidents or anything like that. I just said, canola's pretty. Next day, there were over 40,500 impressions, meaning 40,000 people saw this, 3,800 and something looked at it and gave it a few seconds. It shows the power of amplification of social media. It's a great medium that we can use to share our messages. So and why is it necessary? Well, all the reasons I mentioned earlier. Keeping farmers profitable, better food for consumers, helping out the developing world and providing food security there, and also being great for the environment. These are things we all can get behind, and our students will as well. Start there and talk about the way technology can serve all of these interests. So with that, I will say thank you. Unfortunately, I had to leave a little bit early, but I got to scoot over to Georgia now. But I definitely will be on the panel later today. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them or reach out through any of these email addresses here. And I neglected to mention I host a weekly podcast about biotechnology, 266 episodes and 1.4 million downloads over 5 years. And it's turned, and people really enjoy it. We're #1 in Slovenia. Number one science podcast in Slovenia and Uruguay. So thank you very much, everybody. And, thank you, Nancy, for having me aboard. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much, Kevin. That was really interesting.